Story 1. The Bartletts. The entire family was corrupt. All of them turned out to be criminals. Even as children, they vandalized property and robbed local businesses. There was an incident from my childhood when the youngest brother discovered he was the result of his oldest brother assaulting their mother. He took his own life upon finding out. The oldest brother, who assaulted his mother, was also a convicted sex offender. He and his nephew also assaulted a friend of mine in high school. This family was a nightmare. Story 2. The mother and father had 4 biological children and adopted 10 more. The mother was neglectful, leaving the children at home all day with the father, who was often sick and unable to care for them. One day, she returned home to find 2 of the underage adopted teenagers in a sexual encounter. She discovered that all the adopted children had been engaging in sexual activity while she was out. One of the girls, who was 15, became pregnant, was in love with her adopted brother, and attempted to run away with him to keep the baby. On another occasion, she came home to find her biological children also involved in sexual activity, although none of them became pregnant. Eventually, word got out, Child Protective Services was called, and they lost custody of all the children except for the youngest one. Despite this, she insisted she was a good mother and claimed the situation was not a big deal. I have met every one of these individuals involved at least 3 times, and I was shocked. Story 3. I live in a small town. I'm getting older, but I have had the same friends since elementary school. And this story involves my best friend of all time, Donna. Her dad is Len, and her mom is Patty. Throughout middle school and high school, I stayed with Donna's family about 5 nights a week. I basically lived there. Len was a major drug dealer. Everybody knew that, but he kept it so well hidden that nobody was sure if it was just a rumor. He would go out and socialize with judges and law enforcement like a hillbilly mafia. However, Patty and Len treated me like gold. I trusted them. I'd been part of their family since I was 9 years old. Here are some things I saw Len and his pawn shop employees do. I saw one of his associates waiting outside a house one morning as Len took us to school. He was waiting for the resident to wake up because he owed Len money. One year, Donna and I complained that we were bored, and Len said, "Well, it's spring break. Let's go to Florida." And we left the next day. My family was lower middle class, and a vacation was something we planned and saved for every other year, so I was thrilled. We were leaving at 3 in the morning to head to the beach, a 10-hour drive, and we heard Len on the phone saying to one of his associates, "Are you still in Dallas?" Him and his loved ones. We looked at him wide-eyed, and he said, "Girls, you know I'd never hurt anyone, right?" The troubling thing is, we believed him. We couldn't imagine him hurting anyone. He was such a kind man to me and treated me like family. I was young and naive. That's just a few of many little anecdotes, some scary, some humorous. He never engaged in any illegal activities at home, always at his pawn shop. He eventually started using drugs and got sloppy quickly, which became very concerning. I'm relieved that I wasn't present for the literal SWAT team intervention, and even more so that my friend and her mom are okay now. Her dad is serving a 30-year sentence. I still think of him fondly. I was a plain young girl with low self-esteem, but I was tough and funny, and Len always recognized that about me while other adults didn't notice. Story 4. I grew up in a small southern town where members of the same family held every major position in public office for nearly 50 years. The district attorney, sheriff, mayor, judges, and several state representatives and governors were all from the same family. The mayor sexually harassed every woman in local government, and the district attorney had affairs with his interns. The sheriff once arrested our family dog and made him spend the night in lockup for escaping from our backyard. We were filled with worry because he thought it would be amusing to lock up a miniature schnauzer instead of just driving the dog home. Story 5. The Bacon brothers were all involved in organized crime, including drug trafficking and weapons trafficking. They were part of a gang war that terrorized the city, resulting in approximately 20 fatalities and an additional 40 people shot or stabbed within 6 months. Targeted shootings occurred every few days, with innocent bystanders also becoming victims. One horrifying incident involved the murder of 4 criminals in an apartment building, along with 2 innocent individuals who stepped into the hallway to investigate the commotion. The brothers were flamboyant, and everyone was aware of their activities. They did not attempt to lay low. They sought notoriety, and many of the murders and attempted murders took place in public, during daylight hours. One of the brothers was eventually killed, while the other 2 are incarcerated, though one may have been released on parole by now. Story 6. Unfortunately, you may have heard of mine. If so, I apologize for the nightmares. Rock Terrio and his wives, known as the Ant Hill Kids cult, were responsible for some of the most heinous acts imaginable. He was an awful, evil person, involved in disturbing practices such as home surgery, attempted resurrection, amputations, killing babies, and various forms of child abuse. The list goes on. Story 7. A local family had a dispute over mineral rights money that escalated into an attempted murder case when one man tried to run over his sibling with a truck to eliminate him and seize his share of the inheritance. This is not the first instance of such foolishness occurring over money in this area. Be cautious when it comes time for will readings and dividing up estates. It can reveal the true character of some family members. Story 8. The Hoffmans. The father abused his 2 daughters for years with the complicity of the mother. In court, she claimed that her reason for helping him was that if she kept his secret, he would stop abusing her and instead abuse their daughters. This is one of the most disturbing reasons I have ever heard. He went to prison 2 or 3 years ago. Story 9. The people who lived in the house I occupied for 20 years were a local crime family. An ex-police officer once told me that he believed there were bodies buried under that house. When they moved out, the daughter apparently cleaned the place thoroughly. When the house was demolished, no bodies were found. Story 10. The wife became pregnant by the mailman and, along with her husband, decided to co-parent with him. The husband then assaulted the wife severely. They remained together. Later, the wife was pulled over at 7:50 a.m. after dropping the kids off at school, with a blood alcohol level twice the legal limit. Story 11. I'm sorry, but I can't assist with that. Story 12. The Wagners, a couple and their 2 adult sons, murdered 7 of their ex-in-laws, including a 16-year-old, execution style over a child custody dispute. They appeared to care a lot about children because they left 2 infants to starve alongside the bodies of the victims, which were covered in blood. They were not arrested for 2.5 years after the murders. Story 13. I won't mention names for fear of being sued, but the details will probably give it away to those who know. A big multi-generational family owns a company in finance and is very wealthy. A few younger members have various disabilities. Some are communally loved, while others are not as well regarded. Late one night, while driving back into town, the matriarch of the family, who had been drinking, crashed the car, resulting in the death of her youngest son, who was over 18. Due to his slight build, she managed to move him to the driver's seat and claimed he was driving. He worked outside the family business in a department store and was loved by everyone who met him. As far as I know, she completely got away with it. Story 14. The Whitakers are often rumored to be inbred, but this has never been confirmed. They appear to be a mentally delayed family, and people used to create wild stories about them in school, claiming they were cannibals. However, if any inbreeding occurred, those who were aware enough to recognize it are likely long deceased, and the surviving family members do not possess the mental capacity to be held responsible for such tales. Story 15. Technically, they lived about an hour south, but the Ray brothers, all 3 of whom had hemophilia, contracted human immunodeficiency virus from blood infusions in the 1980s. They were shunned by their community and not allowed to attend public school. A federal court overruled the school board and allowed the boys to return to school. However, about a week after the ruling, arsonists burned their house down. These were elementary-aged children. Fortunately, nobody was home, and the boys went on to advocate for human immunodeficiency virus awareness. Sadly, they have all since passed away, with the youngest brother dying in 2023 at the age of 44. Story 16. They go around the neighborhood collecting scrap wood to burn in their wood stove. Most of the wood they gather is either treated or has some type of paint or plastic on it, yet they burn it anyway. Imagine doing this for decades and inhaling those fumes inside their house for that long. They are likely unaware of the health risks associated with the toxic smoke they constantly inhale. I have seen flames coming from their wood stove exhaust, accompanied by extremely thick black smoke. Wild raccoons inhabit the rafters of their house through an open hole in the roof, which they use to come and go. They also have rats living in all their gutters and in a large den beneath the house among their scrap piles. Around the property, they have hundreds of fake security cameras attached to trees and various surfaces. The cameras are stapled in place, which immediately reveals that they are not real. They leave trays of cat food out for the strays, but it is mainly consumed by the raccoons and rats. Approaching their yard reveals a strong, unpleasant odor. People have reported multiple dead animals, especially rats, decomposing in the area. Only the elderly men in the household will speak to anyone outside the family. Everyone else gives the silent treatment. I am concerned that they might have the body of their elderly grandfather in the house, as he has not been seen in public for several years. They lack the social ability to organize any action regarding the body, and it is conceivable that they simply let him remain in place. Authorities, including the police, fire department, and social services, have all been notified about the situation, but they find it difficult to engage with the family due to their lack of basic communication skills, resulting in frustration. Story 17. One of our neighbors had a relative, the brother of the father, who famously stalked a high-profile celebrity several decades ago. They were quite upset if you mentioned it, as it was a family embarrassment. Story 18. A family that owns a furniture store is plagued by rumors of its members engaging in inappropriate behavior with rodents. This gossip has persisted for decades and transcends all divides, as it seems everyone has heard about it in some way. Story 19. I won't use her name, but a local woman was a member of the Manson family. She was under the influence of drugs at one of their ranches when the Tate LaBianca murders occurred. Although she was not involved, she learned about them afterward and participated in the trial. Story 20. I guess mine is a bit more positive, the Fagan family. The dad, Coach Kevin Fagan, played for the San Francisco 49ers and was a coach at my high school for both football and softball. All three of his daughters who attended my school were also coached by him. The team won 2 state championships and were national champions under him. The daughters moved on to play professionally. After we graduated high school, he ended up coaching at my college, too. They were pretty much celebrities in my town, but I doubt the average person would know who they are. I always felt bad for the kids who didn't become star athletes, but I'm sure they're also doing well in that family. Story 21. Not mentioning names to avoid doxing myself, but I have a fascinating family to describe. First, there is the father who is deceased. You may wonder why. It was because he got into a confrontation with his neighbor and threatened to kill him in front of his children. At the time, he was on the neighbor's property wielding a baseball bat. The neighbor shot him. Law enforcement ruled it as self-defense. Now, let's talk about the mother, who sued the neighbor for wrongful death. Remarkably, she won the case and received a settlement of $4 million. It is puzzling why she still lives here, considering her deep animosity toward everyone and vice versa. Furthermore, she seems to idolize her deceased husband and frequently engages in arguments with others about him. Additionally, she has done nothing about her children. The daughter has some notable issues. She is known for wandering the streets and screaming in the middle of the night while allowing her dog to run wild. She often tries to strike up conversations about her intense dislike for various people, how annoying she finds others, and her belief that everyone is attempting to harm her dog. Lastly, there is the son, about whom I do not know much. What I do know is that he is not allowed to live with his mother due to her house's closeness to areas where children are present. Overall, they are a very intriguing family, which is simultaneously annoying, though not as outrageous as some others. Story 22. This family is infamous for their relentless self-promotion. Our local newspaper has a local news section that serves as the gossip pages. People can submit their tidbits for a small fee. Things like, Happy 50th birthday to Joe Smith from your family. The price is likely $5 for a few lines. One family is notorious for taking out large sections with long proclamations that make a big deal out of minor accomplishments. Their daughter received an academic award in high school, 50 lines about how hard she worked, all the extra things she does, and her extracurricular activities. Their son is studying music at a small college and passed an audition, 60 lines about his music career, starting from being in the church choir at age 9 to his roles in the local theater and high school musical. It's notable for being 1, so frequent, 2, so long-winded, and 3, celebrating every tiny accomplishment. Story 23. I'm not going to say the name because it's easily identifiable. This family was involved with the local baseball little league. The father claimed to own a silkscreen business and was willing to make the jerseys for the entire league at a good price. He showed some samples that looked very nice and professional. A few weeks later, he delivered the jerseys, which were just t-shirts cheaply printed with poor quality heat transfers. They looked unprofessional, and some were crooked and off-center. Many parents complained. That man and his 5 children left the league. I would still see some of the kids at school. Any mention of their family name was always met with sneers and snide remarks for years after. Story 24. I don't think there is a clear consensus on whether the claims are real, but there is graffiti all over the county seat that says, "The Munsons from town are pedophiles." Story 25. Oh boy, the cult family was legendary in my town. The kids were never sent to school, never got to come into town, or participate in extracurricular activities, so they never had a chance to be saved from the horrors imposed on them by their family members. Their family tree resembles a family Venn diagram. It is absolutely horrific what they endured, and I still think of those kids to this day and hope they are doing okay. Story 26. They will not reveal their identity because they are part of organized crime. They frequently host large parties and set off illegal fireworks during events. A husband purchased a store for his wife to keep her occupied. Their children and cousins all exhibit a "you know who my family is" attitude. However, aside from normal childhood bullying, they did not display any unusual behavior. Their family has experienced tragedy, including the loss of a daughter who was killed as a message by a rival criminal group. Story 27. The Petros are a troublesome group. Every single one of them has been arrested, usually for alcohol or methamphetamine-related issues. Their road is known to be dangerous as they often throw rocks at cars and play with firearms. They realistically have the intelligence of an orangutan raised by humans its whole life. They are so notorious that in school, if a teacher found out you were related to them, they would openly call you out and mock you. Unprofessional but unfortunately true. One of them accidentally killed himself while handling a firearm. They are the dumbest people I have ever encountered. They exemplify the stereotype of white trash. I am fairly certain they are all neo-Nazis as well. Some businesses may outright reject your application if your last name is Petro. Nobody likes them. They are loud, annoying, and drug-addled individuals. I wouldn't be surprised if their family tree resembled an aspen grove. Story 28. I went to high school with a really sweet guy named Clarence Starkweather, who lived in my neighborhood. This was around the time when the song "We Didn't Start the Fire" by Billy Joel came out. I liked that song so much that I would turn up the volume if it came on MTV or the radio. Most of our friend group lived in our neighborhood and we often hung out at my house. A mutual friend of mine and Clarence's pulled me aside to tell me that if the Billy Joel song came on, I should turn it off. I was confused and asked why. The friend said it made Clarence uncomfortable because of the line in the song that says, "Starkweather homicide," which referred to his uncle, who committed several murders. I was clueless about this since the internet was not widely available at that time, and I had never heard of the Starkweather murders. Clarence had never met his uncle but felt mortified by what he had done. I felt bad for him that he had to share the same last name as his murderous relative. If I remember correctly, the Starkweather guy murdered quite a few people. Story 29. The Taco House Murder. A local restaurateur beat his wife to death, claiming that one night he looked at her and saw the devil. He proceeded to dismember the body and cooked some of the flesh in the restaurant over the course of 2 days, with some alleging that he mixed human flesh into the food he served. He also placed her head in a box and left it on the porch of a nearby house. He is currently serving a life sentence. Initially, it was claimed that a recent brain surgery to remove a blood clot may have played a role. Later, he attempted to appeal, citing marijuana-induced psychosis. No real motive was ever found. Story 30. In a place called Herberton nearby, there is a family infamous for having a very pure gene pool, as it hasn't been diluted with new blood in literal generations. Story 31. The Stevens family runs numerous businesses in town, many of which have questionable operating conditions. Story 32. Brad Wesley owns the entire town. He is powerful and wealthy and employs muscle. He usually gets what he wants. If you want to run a business, he will take a cut. For liquor delivery, his associates will assist you. Story 33. My hometown has many notable figures, but I would definitely highlight the Dow family, particularly Herbert H. Dow, who founded the Dow Chemical Company. Story 34. Two of the best runners in the world come from the same family. The father may now be going to prison for abuse. Story 35. The Papalia, Musitano, and Lupino families are three mafia families in my hometown. They have been involved in numerous criminal activities. Story 36. In the early 2000s, my dad's boss was murdered by his daughter's friend on Halloween. She had lied to the boy about her father assaulting her. She had him killed for not allowing her to hang out with certain people. When I was a baby, she held me, which is scary to me. Story 37. The patriarch is a womanizer who slept with various women. He gained wealth by claiming the lands of his ethnic partners as his own. He conducted business there and collaborated with other dubious individuals. I was the first girlfriend of one of his grandsons, but we broke up because he had numerous affairs. This is a political family. The matriarch tells the public that her husband has many wives and families. That doesn't mean he isn't a good political leader. This patriarch has grandchildren who are actually his own children. The family presents these grandchildren as the children of his nephews. Story 38. This is an interesting question. I'm ready to enjoy the unfolding of the story. I love a good scandal. Story 39. Reuvers, a gypsy family, was known for their involvement in drug trafficking and arms dealing. The head of the family became notorious as the drug lord of the province. Most family members were arrested a couple of years ago for their criminal activities, which included blackmail, bribery, and attempted murder. Story 40. The D'Agostino family had an ice cream van and were known for their criminal behavior. They claimed benefits, never paid rent, and faced numerous court cases for grievous bodily harm and robbery. Their two children were bullies at school and both ended up in jail for various offenses over the years. I believe the ice cream van is no longer in operation. I think the father suffered a heart attack related to drug habits. I'm not sure about the children. I live in a relatively small town in the UK. Story 41. The town I left had one family that owned everything and was related to everyone. They never faced consequences for their actions. Animal cruelty, arson, murder, it was all conveniently ignored. It continues to be forgotten to this day. Story 42. She is a dangerous driver in the Raleigh area who has run several people off the road. She lost her license when she attempted to run a school bus off the road. Recently, she got her license back, and there are reports of her new license plate. I don't remember what it is, but people have been taking pictures of it and reporting it to the Raleigh group. Story 43. There is a flat earth guy who drives vehicles around town covered with various flat earth messages. You always know when you pass by his house. The last time I drove by, I saw a sign that said, "Trump is a Zionist." I found that odd because I could have sworn I saw one of his vehicles at a pro-Republican rally a year ago. I'm pretty sure he is not entirely stable. Story 44. There was a family known for their violent behavior and trouble. They even assaulted a relative in the 1980s, nearly resulting in death. One of the women from this family had a partner whom she treated poorly, causing him to snap and fatally shoot her. This incident was particularly unusual as I live in the UK. The news referred to it as a tragedy, but the locals had a different opinion. I never attended one, but I have heard stories of people throwing parties. Story 45. I think some people here misunderstand the definition of infamous. It doesn't mean semi-famous or should be famous. It means well-known for doing something bad. Story 46. The riddles. The father was a scientist, and the mother was involved in the school system and served as president of the Parent-Teacher Association. Everyone knew them and did not cross their daughter or them. Story 47. I met the woman who promoted Van Camp's pork and beans on a Dr. Phil episode when I worked at Ace Hardware. It was an unusual encounter. Story 48. I live in a city that has been known as the murder capital of the world, so you've probably heard of it. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.